This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. Now, life itself is a maze, and we're going to go through it no matter what we choose. So, to get through it, we have to be observant. We have to be aware. We have to understand that we're not alone. There's a message there. Ask for help, but don't wait before you become overwhelmed. My guest today is Melissa Crook, and I met her on podmatch.com. When I read her bio, I said, wow, this is my life. Where did you learn all about me, Melissa? And then I read it again and I realized, well, it's not really my life, but it's the same typical journey. And then I also realized in the many women that I coach for just simple life coaching changes, I hear the same thing, that there is something physical, something emotional going on with them, but nobody knows how to diagnose this because you run a blood test, blood works fine. Do an EKG, it's okay. As I told you before we came on, Melissa, I'm still going through the recovery of 2 injuries. Mm-hmm. In March, I mentioned to the doctor 3 months after my shoulder surgery that I was still feeling lethargic. And his answer to me was, Karen, you just turned 75. What do you expect? And my answer was, 3 months ago, I could clean my house. I could work 10 hours a day. I could go grocery shopping. I could clean. I could do everything and not be lethargic. Mm-hmm. And now I get up in the morning and I can barely get out of bed. And again, the answer was, Karen, you just turned 75. Wow. So, Melissa, you've been through this. Mm-hmm. Yours happened a little earlier in life, at the age of 50, when I can hear some doctors saying the same thing. Oh, Melissa, you're 50. What do you expect?
Oh, yeah.
So tell us and take us on your journey.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, so much. And I tell you, the things that you've highlighted already are the exact reason I started these conversations and have built this network, because there's so much gaslighting and minimizing and lack of research, quite honestly, about women's health out there. And so it's time for us to start making some noise about it and bringing these conversations out in the open to the surface, because I have talked to close to 200 women over the last couple of years as I've been doing this, and our stories are not that different. And yours is another example. It's just a matter of how it manifests itself. But in the fall of 2019, my husband and I had moved to Lubbock, Texas. He took a new job with the Texas Tech University system. This was our 11th move. We've lived all over the country. I am very savvy and well acquainted with moving. So it doesn't affect me the same way it might affect someone who's not as used to it. And so we had done the move, and we were doing the move without kiddos this time. One was married, 2 were in college. I'm like, oh, this will be a breeze. I don't have to acclimate anybody else besides myself, and my husband. And so we're in great shape here. So we had just spent a very emotional summer caring for my husband's parents in the state of Washington. My mother-in-law was well into Alzheimer's at that point. And so we had spent some time with him for a couple of months prior to my husband leaving his job in New York to just get an in-person assessment of that. So we came into this ready, full of, expectations and excitement for this new move. So get there. We're about 10 days in. We're staying in a hotel still because our house hasn't closed. I get back from my morning workout and I cannot settle. My heart starts racing, my blood pressure. I can feel just everything in me seizing up, and I start feeling lightheaded. And I go down to the lobby and I'm like, I think I might be having some kind of a heart issue or heart attack. I'm literally never felt this way. I can't get anything to settle since I got back from my workout. And the poor kid at the front desk, he's probably a college student at Tech, is just got this panic look on his face. In typical woman fashion, I'm going to come in when I'm the one that's health episode of this. He's trying to find the paperwork that I'm supposed to sign some release form that if they call an ambulance for me, I won't sue the hotel if I die. Something insane like that. So yeah, so I end up, my husband's office is 3 minutes away. I just text him real quick and I'm like, I need you ASAP here. By the time this poor kid figures out how to get me to the hospital, you could have been here and had me there by now. So my husband zips over. He has to ask his office where the hospital is. We don't even know. We've been there for 10 days. Ask where the hospital is. Luckily, it's not very far from where we are. Get in there. Sure enough, I mean, my blood pressure's off the charts. My heart's racing. I'm sweating. So they don't even sit me down to wait. They could tell, I think, from the look on my face. They brought a blood pressure thing and a heart monitor right out to the check-in desk, checked it, brought me back. I didn't even have to sit down. Got me hooked up to the EKG, monitored me, did all these different tests, had a cardiologist come in and look at everything. And after about 4 hours, everything settled and they sent me home. And they're like, oh, moving is stressful. And I'm like, I've moved 11 times and I have no kids. This is not because of the move. But everything looks fine. Go home, try to relax. So I go home. I leave a couple days later for New York to go get our stuff that's in storage there to get it on the moving truck to come to Texas. Come back from that. And about 3 or 4 days later, I'm out at our house and unloading a bag from a Target run, and it starts happening again. Everything elevates. I have my bladder just drops in the middle. Like I have releases in not the physical bladder, but releases like in the middle of the floor without any notice. So I call my husband again. I'm like, there's some weird things happening again. Let's go. So back to the ER we go. This time they checked every organ. I had been going to a cardiologist. They had me hooked up to all the monitors. Everything was showing fine. They actually told me, like, you have an incredibly healthy heart. Like you would have to have some really big event happen to throw off how healthy your heart is. So it's like, okay, again, looked at everything, and a nurse in the ER, and he's like, this guy isn't in our system, but I think he might be able to help you. And it was a holistic practitioner there in Lubbock that he recommended, that he just had scratched on a piece of paper with a phone number. So I give this guy a call the next day and set up an appointment. My husband goes with me. Well, there's some things going on here. You're definitely, perimenopausal. So for sure, maybe some hormone things we need to balance. He's like, and you've moved and you've been caring for your in-laws, but are you feeling anxious about things? It sounds like you've had a lot going on. And so he's asking me these questions outside of the readings. He starts asking, getting really curious. And my husband pipes in. He's like, her and her friend Anxiety have been close friends for 30 years. We've been together. And I kind of looked at him with a look. He's like, dude, I've been in the ER with you the last 10 days. I'm going to bring this up. So he's like, I definitely think there's some things we can do to check your hormones and see if we need to get some things in balance there. He's like, but I also recommend you reach out to a therapist. There might be some other mental health things that are going to be typical woman I see who's taking care of everybody else that hasn't, necessarily checked in with herself. And I was like, I work like that. He's like, that's one component. He's like, there's the emotional component, there's the mental health component. So I recommend, I'm going to look at these other things. We're going to put you on some blood pressure medication for now to settle everything. He goes, but I suspect that has a lot more to do with these other things you're going to talk about with your therapist than with anything I'm going to be able to tell you here. And so he was the first person that went beyond the blood work, went beyond the test results. So sure enough, I got into therapy, did some therapy shopping with a therapist, found somebody I clicked with. And it was my third time in therapy in my life, but the first time that I feel like my nervous system really felt like, okay, it's time. It's safe. The kids are grown. It's just you and your partner now. There's some room for you, and we've got some stuff to unpack. And that really became my journey of starting to unpack and uncover all the unprocessed emotions and unpressed traumas that I've been carrying around stored in my body for most of my life and had never taken the time to address outside of physically moving my body, some journaling throughout my life, and never really diving in, like never really getting quiet. I didn't sit well. I wasn't comfortable with the quiet. And this forced me to get comfortable with the quiet. And then the pandemic hit in the spring where I was working from home. I had a lot more quiet time. All the activities outside of my job had stopped. And it was a really like, oh, this isn't going to be a 6-month run to the therapist, get a few ideas and move on with my life. This is going to be a journey. This is going to be an unpacking of all of these narratives that haven't been serving me. This is going to be getting real and honest with myself about moving through and processing everything I've been stuffed, everything I've been told that the world didn't need to hear about or wasn't ready for. That began that journey. And I realized about a year and a half into the journey that I knew women all over the country. And most of us had a story where we hit a wall of some sort before it got our attention to start attending to all the parts of our health and to start pushing back and getting curious and not putting up with being gaslit or minimized, and being told it was all in our heads. And the actual connection between our mental, emotional, and physical health, that it's actually really smart and healthy to prioritize your self-care. It is not selfish, because when you take the time to care for yourself, you then show up as your healthiest self. Not only are you winning, so is everyone else around you. And I knew we had to start having these conversations. And so that's what really spurred me on to start my network and start getting women talking and providing a safe space for us to do so.
Well, so many of us were brought up in a way that we were told by, especially our mothers, you don't hang your dirty laundry out there for anybody else to see. And as a kid, I used to ask that question, well, Mom, you just wash the laundry. It's not dirty, and you're hanging it outside. And she would say to me, yes, but you don't hang it all outside. And it bothered me because she would also ask me and my brothers if something was bothering us to tell her what it was, but we never really told her because that was her dirty laundry. And so I realized I was holding it in, but I thought that's what I had to do. That's the only way that I can take my next step. And it didn't hit me until I was just about 6 years old. I was working a job I loved, but the culture was killing me. And I put on blinders about the culture because if I let that bother me, I can't take care of my students. So I went to work every day, went in extra early, stayed extra late, because I thought I was doing what was important. And I finally got to a point that my youngest son, who was driving home from work one day, said to me, Mom, you're really depressed. And I just looked at him and I said, well, no, I'm not. He said, yes, you are. He said, you're not the same person you used to be. And here he is, 21 years old, telling me that I'm depressed. Like, that's not going to cut it. But halfway through the drive home, I started crying. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, I am depressed. Number one, I don't like the fact that you're driving me home and I'm not driving myself. I mean, silly thing, but that's the way it started. Then I got home and my husband says, what's for dinner? And it was like, I worked all day, you worked all day. Why are you asking me? But I had taken that on as my responsibility. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't he ask me? But all those things came to a boil that one night. And I looked at both of them and I said, I can't go back to work. And my husband looked at me and he said, what's wrong? And then I finally blurted it all out. I'm doing all this work, but it's is appreciated by my students. But the other faculty members, they don't like me. It's horrible going to work, not being liked.
Yeah.
And my husband said to me, it's all in your mind. And I said, you're right.
Oh,
It is in my mind because that's what I'm experiencing.
yeah.
And as soon as I said that to him, he understood.
Mm.
Maybe you're right. So, how do we as women feel okay to have these conversations and not just complain? Because that's what I did in the beginning. I just kept complaining. It was their fault, whatever. And it wasn't until I actually got into therapy that my therapist said to me, do you want to blame somebody else? Or do you want to take the next step to getting healed? My first reaction was, well, I do want to blame them. And she said to me, then you're in the wrong place. That really scared me. It was like, and she said, when you're ready to take the next step, we'll have another appointment. And with that, she closed her notebook, she looked at the door, and I walked out. And I called her about 2 hours later. I said, I took this step out of your door. I need to step back in. But we all don't have therapists like that or coaches.
Right.
So give me an idea how people have reached out to you and how you get them through that horrible feeling.
Yeah. So this is I always tell people when I start with this step, minute, this isn't going to make sense to you, but I'm going to ask you to trust me. So I start with what's called the layers work, and that is embracing all of the parts and pieces that make up who you are, the parts we love, the parts we don't, the parts we've shoved away and been told aren't worth talking about. We're told as women, don't be angry, don't be sad, think positive. And so we see all these things and we and then we build shame around it or fear around it or anger around it. And it just keeps building on top of each other. And we're not meant to carry all of that. So the first thing I do, excuse me, is I'm like, I want to get really curious rather than judgmental when you bump up against a layer. And that was great advice I got from my therapist, by the way. But curious rather than judgmental when you bump up against a layer, a season of your life, decision you made, something that happened to you that you really don't want to sit down with, that you're really uncomfortable with, and you'd rather just forget or move aside. I want you to go back to where you were in that season and start asking yourself, who was I surrounded with? What were the narratives that I believed? What kind of examples did I have? What was my station in life at that time? Financially, socially, emotionally. Try to get really familiar with who you were in that moment. And then look at the decision you made, what happened to you, however this folded out. And when you start asking yourself these questions with curiosity rather than judgment, it can help you see, given the examples I'd had, the narratives I'd heard from my family, from my social systems, from my friends, from my faith space, my communities, I can see why I made that decision, or I can see why I was in that situation. I don't love it any more than I used to, but I can have empathy about it. I'm no longer embarrassed or ashamed of that 25-year-old. I now get why this was uncovered and why she had such a hard time with it. And so that begins the process of embracing your layers, of then like, okay, what is still impacting me to this day? Where this is still showing up? What needs to be healed? What needs to be acknowledged, recognized? And you go from there and you go through that with these different layers that you struggle with. And you start asking yourselves these questions as you start taking away the judgment and start applying the curiosity. You all of a sudden you have some empathy. You have some, oh, that makes sense. It doesn't mean you love it anymore, but you get it. And so that opens the door for you to no longer have these really unhealthy conversations with yourself about that situation. You're having more healthy conversations with yourself. You're more mindful of how you think of it. And when you're able to embrace your layers and see those pieces and parts with compassion and curiosity and empathy rather than judgment, shame, fear, anger, sadness, grief, all the other things that we stuffed, you're able to start seeing, oh, and then you start caring a little bit more about yourself. You start seeing your value. Then once you can see your value, we prioritize the things that we value. The things that we value make our calendar, get our time and attention and our resources. And so then we jump into, I want you to write down 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months. I want you to write down 5 activities that nourish you. I want you to describe who you are. Name your character traits, not what you do, not your roles and titles, not what someone else has said about you, but what you think about you. This then helps build a base for some things you could do for self-care that fill your cup. Some things that you can incorporate in your life to help you get to those 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months. Are you doing anything? And you start seeing the choices in your life, because when we get stuck, it's because we're seeing everything's happening to us and we don't think we have any choices within it. And this opens the door to start seeing the choices. Even when things happen to us we don't have control over, we can still find the choices we have within that scenario. We're no longer seeing ourselves in this hurtful, negative way. And it's an ongoing thing that you're going to do in life, because life is a journey and things will continue. Life will continue to life. But when you start know where to start and start asking yourself these questions and seeing your value, all of a sudden you're communicating your expectations that are from you rather than expecting people to be mind readers and just know that, well, it's ridiculous that you think I should cook dinner every night, even though I've done it the last 20 years. You should just know that since we both worked that day, that you've never communicated that. It's what you've done because somebody told you along the way that was a woman's job. That was your role. And so there was no communication. You start setting healthy boundaries around your time, who you're giving it to. You decided, I cannot go back to that workplace. They do not value me. It's literally making me sick, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I am now seeing what my friends, Dr. Janelle McCauley, Dr. Drew McCauley and Dr. Janelle Wells have recently written a book that it released a year ago last week called Our Invisible Work. It's all of that work that is assumed that the woman will take on, that is assumed that underprivileged populations will take on, that's never recognized, or there's never a thank you for, there's never a pay raise for, it's not in a job description anywhere. And so you start, but when you start with those steps, and there's a whole process to go through after that of setting healthy boundaries and making the connections between your mental, emotional, physical self, showing up for yourself unapologetically. No more apologizing for walking in a room. You know your voice deserves to be seen, known, and heard. And because you know that, you know other women's voices deserve that too. So you start showing up for them, getting curious about their story rather than seeing them as competition or somebody that you envy. you start identifying what your why and your values are, and you start measuring that against your calendar and your boundaries. And we're like, am I living by narratives that I was told, when I was a girl, or when I was a teenager, or when I was in college, or when I got married? Or am I living by narratives that are actually aligned with what my values are? And if you have trouble with your values, go back to those 5 activities that nourish you. Go back to those 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months to help you identify your values and your expectations. And then that enables you to build a life authentically that you don't feel like you have to apologize for, that you deserve to be seen, known, and heard in. And you're going to surround yourself with the people and places that value you as much as you value you.
Do you find that women who come to you are afraid they're going to lose their family, maybe their husband, their children, the respect from their parents, whoever it is? Like when I said to my husband that day, I can't go back to work. And he made his comment, but then I could comment back and say, yes, it is in my head. That's what I'm thinking. And that's what I feel. And that's when he said, okay, you don't have to go back. Now, I was a major breadwinner in our house.
Yeah.
And my son was going to the college where I worked. So he had free tuition. And so talk about guilt. That was my first reaction. Oh my God, he's not going to have his tuition paid for. He only has another semester. Can I hold on? But I knew I couldn't. Then I kept thinking, I'm 60 years old. What kind of job am I going to get?
Yeah.
And boy, I haven't interviewed for a job in a long time. So all those things went through my head. But my biggest fear was my son being angry because his tuition wasn't being paid. My husband being disappointed in me because I was taking a big chunk of our income away. And so instead of apologizing, and I don't know where I got the strength from, I just looked at them and said, I can't do this. We're going to have to figure out a way to pay for your last semester in school. And if I can find a way to bring in some income, I will. And my husband's first reaction was, we'll figure it out together. I was blessed. But I have to tell you, many of the women I talk to, because their family thinks, oh, you just want to go out and have a good time. Or you never loved us before. So how do you deal with that?
It's a hard one. And I'm very honest with women when they come to me. I'm like, this is going to require you to make some very difficult decisions. The thing that I'm going to put in front of you every single time is, does this require me to abandon myself? Because you have spent your life up to this point abandoning yourself. So it is natural that you're going to get some pushback because people are not used to you showing up in a different way. It's the way. And so it's going to require getting really honest. I mean, I have come to a point where this is now affecting my health in these ways. I've realized I have to make some changes. I do not want to alienate anyone, but I also am hopeful that, I'm going to find out real quick, who is for me and wants me to be well and who is not. And as painful as that can be, it does. I mean, I will tell you, my relationships have changed. There are family members that I love from afar now because the shift, I was no longer going to put myself in situations where I was lighting up my nervous system every time I was around them. And that required me to set some boundaries that they didn't understand. And I had to just, I had to make the choice to not abandon myself. And it was painful. It took me a couple of years to not feel guilty about it anymore. But I finally got to a point where I started making this decision and setting these boundaries. And I had to learn this first before I could help anybody else
Right.
with it, because I had to say, you can do this. I'm not talking from a lack of experience. I have done this. I know what it feels like for those relationships to change and sometimes go away. And I can still tell you, sitting on the other side of it, I have never felt more healthy and authentic to who I am. And I am surrounded by people who genuinely and authentically care about me and what is best for me and what is healthy for me. And we're like, whatever it you need to do. And I remember my daughter, she's going to be, she's 30 now, but so this is probably 4 or 5 years ago now. She said to me at one point, she goes, Mom, I have watched you shop for this group of people your whole life, trying to bend and mold and jimmy yourself into situations to help them come along with you, or to minimize whatever static or pressure there was. But they've continued to want to operate in a very codependent and trauma bond relationship fashion. And you don't owe them anything. Whatever narrative you heard, you don't owe them anything. You owe it to yourself to surround yourself with those that love you. And so I'm able to share my example. I'm also very aware of the fact that economically, there are certain scenarios that they are stuck in. They can't just leave certain environments. And there are times where it is more dangerous for them to leave. And so then we talk about, what are the little choices for yourself you can start making? Where is it that you can find that 5 to 15 to 30 minutes a day to fill your cup with things that nourish you? Whether it's your favorite music as you drive home from work, walk home from work, bike home from work, whether it's taking a walk around the soccer field while your kiddo practices, or maybe with some other moms if you're looking for some social interaction. It's getting home and sitting in the garage for 15 minutes with quiet, no noises, just quiet. And everybody knows that when they hear you pull in the garage, the 15-minute timer is on because you're resetting for the evening. You start communicating rather than assuming people know something's hard for you or that you'd like help. You start communicating where you need help. You start with these little choices for yourself that feel doable, and then we build from there. So you have to start with something that feels doable. And over time, the women I have worked with find their way through this. And I've got a whole platform of resources from women that have come on my podcast as guests, that if there's areas they're struggling with a little more than others, I can be like, okay, looks like this boundaries area is a struggle. And we've given you the stuff that I have in my work, my online course, my one-on-one work with you. But go listen to this episode, follow her, grab her resources. She has a situation that was very similar to yours. I think you're going to find these supportive. So it's a multi-layered, faceted approach that I take, but you got to start with that thing that feels doable, even if it's 5 minutes to yourself every day.
You know, it's interesting, and I didn't even realize that my husband and I had established this, but I don't even know how long it's been going on. But if I really need separation, I will just tell him I'm going into the office, or I'm going upstairs to watch Netflix or something like that. We don't like the same TV programs for the most part.
Yeah.
And so it once was a time I would just sit with him and watch whatever he wanted to watch, or beg him to watch what I wanted to watch. And I realized this is silly.
Yeah.
Because we're not really talking to each other during the show. And so he understands when I'll say to him, I'm going to go upstairs and get some work done. It's not that I want to leave him, but I need that separation. I need something that's going to fulfill me. And it might be just catching up on my work. It might be writing my blog, but he gives me that space. Now, if he needs me for something, he knows where to find me. And that's usually how I leave. You know where I'll be. Um,
Yeah.
and he does the exact same thing. Um, he likes to go out and photograph nature. And he doesn't do it often, but every once in a while he'll just say to me, I'm going out for a couple of hours. And I see him with the camera bag. And sometimes I feel like, boy, I'd really like to go with you because I like to do the same thing. But I realize he needs that separation.
Yeah.
And I have to give it to him because if I don't, that's where that judgment comes in. And if I can be less judgmental for myself and for him, I'm better with other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the biggest message that I've been getting out there. If you can stop judging yourself, you're not going to judge other people. What a world we could live in.
Oh yeah. If we could just learn to be curious with ourselves and pretend like when a situation comes up, what would I say to my mother, my best friend, my sister, my coworker, my mom, and then apply that to ourselves. But I love the example. You gave such an example of healthy boundaries because it's about your behavior, not the other person's behavior. You've made a decision based on your behavior. You're not asking someone else to abandon themselves or something that is working for them. You're simply addressing it with your behavior. And I think that's the biggest thing that I have learned about healthy boundaries is they aren't about the other person's behavior. They're about yours and you taking responsibility and communicating. You've communicated this system of communication that this is a signal. I know what you mean. There are programs that my husband and I like together. There are programs that we don't. And so he knows that at some point when something's on, I'm not going to ask him to stop watching it, but I am going to go outside or go for a walk or do my workout or go into the room and watch something else. I'm not asking him to stop doing it. And it is his decision when he decides if he wants to have some more time with me, he gets to do that and vice versa. And so it's communicating that in a way where when you're trying to shift narratives and you're trying and you're showing up in a way that people are not accustomed to, it is going to backfire if you go in using anything other than I statements. You do this and you do this, and it makes me feel this way. So you need to stop. That's not going to work. That's never going to work. It's not going to go very far. But if you go in and say, I've discovered that these conversations really inflate my nervous system. So just let you know, if this comes up today, I'm probably going to leave the room at some point or go for a walk. I just wanted you to know ahead of time. And then in the future, just kind of know that that's how I'm going to excuse myself. I'm not asking them to not talk about that thing or change how they approach something. I'm letting them know what I'm going to do. So even those subtle things can be the shifts that need to start happening. And like going back to earlier, start with that little thing and start communicating it in that way. And as you get more confidence and you see them respond and see them understand, and you're not going and attacking, you, going back to like, sometimes we do want to blame it. We get mad, we get angry, and we need to work through that anger and madness and that sadness. When someone has done something that has hurt us or wronged us, we need to process that and feel all that. But the big part of that is you don't stay there. You take the responsibility of yourself. How am I going to heal from this? What do I need to do to move forward from this so I don't stay stuck here?
Exactly. Well, how can my listeners find you? I know you have a podcast and I'd love for them to listen to it. So give us a little bit of information.
Absolutely. If you go to embracinglayers.com, everything is there. My podcast, The Field Podcast, my panel show, Together We Feel, our book, Embracing Layers Unapologetically, my online course, Embracing a Field Life, and then a contact form. If you just want a 30-minute session with me, free session to discuss how it is I can support you and come up with a plan for you. But embracinglayers.com has it all there.
I love it. That is wonderful. Well, Melissa, thank you for joining me today. And I went out to your website earlier today. I love it. And I'm going to make sure that all that is in the show notes so everybody can follow you.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
these conversations. Thank you for having these. These are the conversations we need to be having so we can live our healthiest, most authentic lives.
Absolutely. Well, you have a wonderful day. And is it hot down in Texas right now?
Well, I'm actually living in Fresno, California now. We
Oh,
moved 2 summers ago. It is hot in Fresno. We're going to be 105 today.
oh my gosh.
But we're
Well,
supposed to go to the 90s next week. So we're hoping we're going to be out of triple digits by next week.
well, we are in the 70s, so I'm enjoying it today.
Oh,
Have a great day.
Char.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that's so nice. You too. You too.
Bye-bye
Take
now.
care.